Well, welcome everyone. I'm very excited to have you here with me during this time as we're going to be exploring a topic that I have shared regularly throughout the years, mainly within client sessions and also masterminds. But I felt it was important to actually do a micro lesson around this particular focus because it is one that is very much needed. So I'm going to encourage you to make sure that you have plenty of note-taking materials. This will go by fairly quickly, but I always find that it's helpful when individuals do jot down initial ahas that come to them. And also, if I'm guided to do some prompts with you during this time, that will come up. So you want to make sure that you are ready and prepared for this particular experience. So what I'm going to be sharing with you today is a concept that I created that's called the carrier currency conversion. And this is a very interesting topic because it's one, first of all, I've never actually heard of before I created it and then coined this concept. And so this is all about connecting what would be considered your precious, profitable cargo to its cash flow carriage. And so we're going to talk more about what this entails. I'm going to be sharing about this. This looks like what transports your treasures to transactions, right? And then I'm also going to speak a little bit, probably towards the end, in terms of how you create closures for currency connection with this. How do you become a closer for this type of experience? Because sometimes it actually takes this within this initiative. So I want to jump right in just to giving sort of a basic working definition as it relates to what is actually a carrier a current for currency. What does this look like? So when I mentioned about you having this precious profitable cargo, you can look at that as it is your mission, your primary contribution, so to speak, that you are wanting to get out into the world. It's exactly what you've been preparing for. It's what you've created, whether it is a program, a process, or a product or so, a mission or a movement. I look at everything in terms of its missions and movements, even if it is a product, so to speak, whether it's in a micro, a macro format, it is signature to what it is that you are bringing about, all right? Even if it seems that it's subtle, but it is very significant. But what I found is mostly with what you perceive to be your bigger contribution, so to speak, what you think is your flagship or your signature work, that primary mission that you're trying to monetize. A lot of times I find that when people are putting these works out there and they're not getting the traction, so to speak, to that work, the gravitational pull is not there. And why is that? It's because it typically needs something that is transporting it. It's a carrier, so to speak. So your precious cargo needs a carrier. So basically, what transports the mission isn't always the mission itself. So this goes back to when you create something and then you birth it and you launch it, and then you're waiting for response, revenue recognition for what you have prepared. And you know that it's divinely prepared, but again, you don't see the movement around it. So these carrier currents, they act as these temporary or transitional or even tactical, so to speak. They're carriers, exactly what it is. It's movements. It's like the carriage that needs the horse in order to transport it. So we have to look at currency in this way, that sometimes your main money maker, so to speak, or again, mission that you're trying to move out into the marketplace often needs something that is another vehicle of expression that will bring it to your ideal audience to make that currency connection. Now, I love to speak in metaphors, so there'll be probably several metaphors that I use throughout this time. One of the primary metaphors I like to use also when it relates to this particular topic is that your carrier currents, they also act as climate control vehicles. So what I mean by this is when you think about, let's say, essential oils, so to speak, or just even oils that you cook with, sometimes there's a carrier oil that is leveraged to dilute and deliver this potent essence. All right. So your carrier currents, they temper and transport your divine mission without distortion and also without burnout. Because believe it or not, sometimes a bigger, much more expanded mission or a signature talk, a signature work, so to speak, because it's so potent, and even though it's meant to make a strong impact, sometimes the way that it is introduced actually can be a little bit heavy for the audience to ingest. So sometimes there is either a lead in to that can act as a transport to something that segues, or it can be something, even believe it or not, completely altogether different than the actual core theme that you're bringing about. Right. So this is going to get interesting because I'm going to share with you just, a few ways of how this has worked for me throughout the years. And one of the reasons why I believe it's so important for me to share about this topic in this way during this time is because there's so much birthing that's happening. And also, there are a lot of missions that seem to be failed attempts. There have been a lot of aborted missions as it relates to things that were divinely inspired to come forth. But where there's the lack of understanding in terms of how do you convert the impact into income, this is where things have gotten tricky throughout the years. So, for me, primarily, one of the reasons why I was doing this teaching within coaching or within groups, masterminds mainly, is because I was able to see and identify, especially when clients were going through their brand and business metamorphosis or taking processes or products or so through a unique metamorphosis process. That's a new creation metamorphosis, which is one of my signature frameworks in terms of helping brands to evolutionize and optimize their brand expression and beingness. And what I found is a lot of times, not just for myself, again, for others, is that they needed something to carry that mission. They needed something to transport this. Because, again, sometimes we focus on the big theme, overarching theme, so to speak, that wants to be put out there for others to gravitate. But it's not always about even what's inside your carriage, so to speak. But it's all about what gives it motion. What gives it motion? When you think about even a car, you can build a frame, but if the car doesn't have an engine, right, then it's not going to go. Now, that's kind of a built-in metaphor in terms of an all-in-one encompassing vehicle. But, in this regards, it is more about there's something else attached to this that is bringing forth the movement. It's what's causing the movement, to happen. So during this time, even though this is a micro lesson seminar, we are going to take time to be present with what your carriers could potentially be in the present moment, all right? And honoring what is acting as the horse right now, so to speak, even though it's not the main thing, it's not even the destination, so to speak, all right? Because I mentioned earlier in terms of transporting your treasures into transactions, because you can be carrying gold, right? But the cart is what keeps it from being trampled on. It protects it, so to speak. But also, it's what is going to give that cart the movement, right? We want the movement. We need momentum in this area. So we want to focus on what is going to bring that momentum for monetization, because this is about currency. Now, let me speak holistically about currency for a moment, because this is also a hangup where most people, they get stuck in the currency framework or factor because they only see it from a particular vantage point. So mainly, most see currency as the financial aspect. From my vantage point and what I teach in terms of life currency connection is holistically, every experience that we are having is a form of currency. Time is a form of currency for sure. Your life stewardship is a form of currency. Relationships are a form of currency. So we have to look at the broader perspective around profitability in this way, because if not, there's a limited lens in terms of what you can convert in terms of having a cash flow connection, right? So this is a broader perspective that you have to expand into. And just like looking at having a carrier and how that helps to transport your mission. Again, this is very critical. And one of the reasons I mentioned in terms of me talking about this now and bringing this up now in terms of just a micro lesson seminar is because first you need expanded awareness, and then you need now a next level comprehension so that you can start to ultimately carve out and customize this new carrier lane, if you will. It's your own unique way. So this is no cookie cutter formula that I'm giving to you, it is more awareness and your own discovery, if you will, around this particular focus, because it's going to be different for everyone. I can't say that this particular carrier is for you. Now, if we were in a coaching setting, now some of you, of course, are going to be moving forward even from this seminar to have that engagement with me in terms of being able to look at what has come up for you from this experience. And then, yes, I can dial in and we can start to expand that. But just from just a general process in terms of you looking at what is going to be the carrier for me. I recall when I brought this to the forefront for one of my star proteges, she had created this program, and it was her flagship program. And she had a few other components of offerings that were separate, but we were looking at sort of a tier of what it was that she wanted to be providing. And these were programs and products that she spent time investing in and really pouring her heart and soul, and had been on tons of podcasts, wrote tons of articles, and had different guest features, and still yet no movement around that particular flagship offering. And so when we were looking at her different offerings, I was saying this needs something that transports it. It's not about the actual program itself. You need something that is going to not just move the profitability around this, but there has to be a more impactful connection. And sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes there's a lead in. Sometimes there's a lead in by another form of the product. Sometimes if you have, let's say for coaches or so, if you have a bigger program, a flagship program, especially something maybe that's going to take a certain duration of time, it's more lengthy, maybe it's best to offer kind of a 90-day version of it, or some type of product version, an in the box version of it that can serve more as a primer in a sense for the actual experience. It gives people a taste of it, and then they're able to work through that in a much more accelerated format. And then maybe if they want to expand into this larger experience, right?